Okay, let's talk about why most indie films don't make money and how you can fix that. When most indie films lose money, it's estimated that about 90-95% of films actually lose money. So that's not always the filmmaker's fault. And today I want to get into what they can do to kind of up your chances to make sure that you make your money back, and kind of the main problems that always arise that almost guarantee that your film's not going to make any money. And I've seen this firsthand. I've produced, directed, but right now I'm also a film sales agent. And I've sold in the past year 6-7 films, including one with J.K. Simmons. And there's a couple of things that I noticed with selling that I really want to go through, and that what we'll be going through today. And of course, if you haven't, definitely subscribe, because I'm going to keep going and really revealing a lot of the things that the industry doesn't talk about a lot. Because even today, film distribution, film sales, contracts, all those things are pretty much still shrouded in mystery. And it's something that, in my opinion, that the industry does to take advantage of filmmakers. And I want to change that, so definitely subscribe, and I'll be making a lot more of these videos as I go along, including with my own film sales company, and kind of sharing all that transparently. So here's kind of the brutal reality to kind of preface all the things that I want to talk about, or the 5 reasons that indies don't make money, is that most films don't even get distribution. There's a lot of films that, especially if they're in that low budget 50, 100k, 150k range, a lot of those don't get distribution, or if they do, they get really terrible deals where basically it would have been better for them to self-distribute. So that's something to keep in mind, that getting good distribution is something that not a lot of films always get. And I think that's a reality that is important to know. Not any distribution is good distribution. The other thing is that distributors often have marketing caps in there that can be, I've seen anywhere from 10k to 50k. And that wouldn't be a problem if those distributors are actually spending that on the marketing and actually putting all that effort into the film. But the reality is that's not always the case. And a lot of times it's not the case. There's a lot of distributors, they spend maybe 4 or 5k on a film, but they have a 20k marketing cap in there, which means essentially the first 15k is going right into their pocket. And I'm not saying all distributors, there's definitely some good ones out there that I've dealt with, but there are distributors that do that, and you really have to protect yourself. Then the other third reality is that filmmakers, they treat a lot of times film festivals as if that's going to magically solve all the problems, and that's just not the case. Even now, like, there's films that get into these top 5 festivals like Cannes, Berlin, all these, and they're not even getting the deals that they used to get. There's some that get really low deals lately, especially if they're in drama. So to think that film festivals are going to solve your problems, or that they're magically going to come up with good deals just from these festivals is not the case. And I'll make a separate video about this, but there's a lot of festivals that are just not worth it at all, and honestly are kind of money grabs. And I think it's important to really know which ones make a difference and which ones don't, but I think it's important to realize that it doesn't guarantee you anything. Then fourth, another reality that I just want you guys to be aware of is shooting a $1 million budget, and I've seen this, and shooting a $1 million budget film and having no recognizable names in there is really just one of the worst and dumbest things you can do business-wise. I've seen films where they tell me they had $1 million budget and it was pretty much all unknown cast. And I'm not talking about like, hey, we need Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt in here. That's unrealistic. But I'm talking about just recognizable names that people will recognize the face or the name. It's like, oh, I know that guy. That helps you in sales. It's so important. And I realized that too with J.K. Simmons, the film that I sold recently to Europe, and where we're getting 200 theatrical screens. That film completely got in the door thanks to J.K. Simmons. That was the biggest draw for the distributor. He even said that. It makes a huge difference, and he's a pretty big name. Is he Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise? He's not, but he's still a recognizable name, and it adds value to your film. And I think you'll be surprised, and this is why you should team up with a good producer that knows this, or a sales agent early on. You'll be surprised at what rates you can get some of these actors if the script is good and the project is good. So I think you really need to go for that, and even if it's at a 2-day roll, 3-day roll, it has to be in there, especially at $1 million budget, or else you're just really hurting your film. So now that we know that, let's get into the 5 reasons that most indie films don't make any money. Number 1 is that they don't have a clear audience. And I see this all the time, like with films. They make a drama. I love dramas, but they're incredibly hard to sell. They're pretty much the hardest to sell right now. Maybe comedy as well. but drama is pretty much the hardest to sell, especially if it's heavy topics. And I a lot of times see filmmakers come in there like saying their audience is, oh, people that love A24 or people that love Good Will Hunting. I'm just making something up. This happens, and it's not really, that's not a target audience. That's not a clear target audience. That's so broad. That's maybe okay if you're like a huge studio film. If you're a huge studio film, you need to be broad. You need to be able to appeal to a lot of people. If you're an indie film, you need a way more niche audience, a targeted audience, and that could be, and I'm going to use my own example here because we have a film going to production end of December, is tennis. We have a tennis film happening end of December, and that's a niche audience, that's a targeted audience, but it's still big enough to make money. It's the tennis audience, the people that love tennis, that are tennis fans. That is a lot more narrow than just everyone that loves dramas, for example. So, and we did that on purpose, you know, we knew that if we appeal to tennis people, that is a built-in audience, and you need to do that as an indie film. You need to know what your audience is so that down the line, you know how to market it as well. Number two, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but overinflated budgets. I can't tell you how many times I see budgets, and this goes for not just feature films, this goes for short films. I had someone bring me a short film, and I was talking to them, and they were like, oh, the budget's like 40-50K, and I was like, but that doesn't make any sense for a short film. Like, why is it so high? You don't have any huge name talent in there at all. Why is the budget so high? And then once we talked about it, we realized that he easily could cut 30K without sacrificing anything of the movie. So overinflated budgets, it happens a lot. It happens everywhere on the studio level too. But especially in indie films, like, make sure that that budget is as tight as you can get it and as lean as you can get it, and that it's being used properly. If you tell me that your budget's $1.2 million, but I don't recognize any of the actors that you have attached or you're going to attach, then I'm gonna be thinking to myself, okay, but where's the money going then? Especially if it's a drama where there's not any expensive set pieces, no expensive action, nothing like that. Then I'm going to be asking you, like, okay, why is it $1.2 million if there's no name actors? What's it being spent on? I think this is really important for filmmakers to do, is to really be smart with the budget, especially nowadays when, you know, it is a tougher environment. So you need to make sure that you're more lean so you have a higher chance of making money back. 3, like I mentioned, huge problem, festival only thinking. I already went over that, but the biggest thing is, do not think that that's a business model. Even Sundance winners can struggle to recoup their budget. So that doesn't guarantee anything, and it's not one of those things where you get into a festival and you're like, okay, I'm done. I can relax and I can just hand it off now and we're done here. It's like, no, that's not the case anymore. You can't do that anymore. So it's not the end all and be all festivals anymore. Vice versa, you could get into no big festivals and still be very successful with your film. So that should give you hope. Then the other thing, weak marketing strategy. This one is huge, and if you follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, I talk about this all the time because it is mind-blowing to me. I've worked in marketing before, worked in a lot of different industries way before film, and marketing's always been essential, sales and marketing, and I'm always blown away in film how little of that is going on. And I'm not talking about studio films. Obviously they're spending a lot on, you know, P&A and marketing and everything. They have huge budgets for that. That's not who I'm talking about here. And honestly, we could get into that too, but honestly, I don't think they spend the money really well anyway. But indie films, a lot of times I will see, again, I just recently saw a budget of a $4 million film, which is a sizable budget for an indie film. That's solid. And I looked through the budget lines and there was nothing about marketing. Marketing literally had 0 next to it, which means to me you're relying completely on the distributor who has a 10 or 20K marketing cap that we just talked about, maybe a 30K marketing cap that they might not even be fully spending. But even if they are 20-30K, that's not a lot. That you can't rely fully, especially for a $4 million, $5 million film, you can't rely fully on just that amount. You can't expect to have success with that. So I think that's a huge thing, and something that I'm going to keep talking about and talk about more. But you have to have your own marketing budget. If you're in these budgets of like $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, it's crazy if you don't have a marketing budget. Even I think if you're in the 200, 300K range, you should still have a marketing budget. Obviously, it's a lot smaller, but you should set it aside. And sometimes filmmakers are like, oh, well, I don't have we spent all the money on making the film. And it's like, but that doesn't matter because you were able to spend it on other things. And if you tell me that marketing is a bonus, then that's what you're saying. If you treat it as essential as anyone on the crew or any of the actors or any of the things that you needed to make the film, then you would figure out a way to get that in there. But right now it's still seen as a bonus or as like, oh, it's nice to have type of thing. And again, it doesn't have to be a large amount, but it needs to be set as an essential thing, because otherwise you're just screaming into the void with your film. Like why spend all this effort making this film, spending years on something to not have a marketing budget, to not have a marketing plan? That is crazy. So don't do that, and make sure you set some money aside. Now, if you're a micro budget film and you're like 50K, 60K film, maybe you set aside 1,000 for marketing. Maybe you don't have a lot maybe you really could barely get this thing made, so you have no marketing money. And even if you have zero, then make up for it with sheer effort. That means use TikTok, use Instagram, use YouTube, and post, but post like an obscene amount. Like, don't post like once a week even, or once a month like a lot of filmmakers do. Post every single day. And if you're like, oh, I don't have time for that, well, you got to choose one. Like, either you have money for the marketing or you have time and you make up for it that way. And anyone can make time for it if you prioritize it. Maybe you spend, and I just had this talk with some filmmakers, maybe you just spend a Saturday and a Sunday one weekend and you literally wake up and all the way till night, you just make tons of content. You make just all content throughout the whole weekend, and that way you have maybe you have 100 pieces right there from the weekend. And maybe, especially now with all technology they have, there's AI that will cut things for you. Opus, I believe, is a good one. I've used that before. A lot of clips are bad, but sometimes there are good ones. So it'll take a 10-minute piece of content and make it into 10, 20, 30, 40, 50-second clips. So you can find ways to do that and repurpose things and easily get 100 pieces of content, and then schedule that out, and then you're set for the next 100 days, for example, so that's one way to do it completely for free. And honestly, I think this is a huge hole in the market still. I think filmmakers have the ability to be some of the best marketers because they are creative. You guys are really good at like thinking outside the box in that way. They could be way better than some of these traditional marketers that just kind of play it safe and do boring marketing. So I think this is just a huge hole in the market and something that can really differentiate yourself as a filmmaker. And I just noticed this myself with a film we're selling, because that filmmaker is so on top of things and is so like involved with the marketing, has such a good plan, and has done so much for it, that the distribution companies we're talking to were more interested because of that. So that's another thing, it makes you more sellable. So I'm kind of beating it over the head, but that's just how important I find it. And it's something that I think all filmmakers should focus on. And then lastly, number 5, bad distribution deals. That can kill your film completely and make it that you make zero money. The amount of filmmakers that I've talked to that have handed their film off to distributors and have never seen $1 is quite a lot. It's scary. So don't sign really bad distribution deals. Talk to the filmmakers that have worked with this distribution company. Talk to a couple of them and get a full idea of what you're dealing with. Make sure that your contract is, you can negotiate, but make sure you're not signing anything crazy. Like, my eyes, if they're taking 50% commission, it's too high. If the marketing cap is 50K, that's too high. You're guaranteed to see no money then. And even with the marketing cap lower, like, see what they're spending it on. Ask like, how is that being spent, and like how much percentage is X, Y, or Z? Like, how much is social media? How much is ads? You know what I mean? How much are you spending on PR if they're doing that? So really ask. You're allowed to ask, and if they're dodgy about it, that should tell you a lot, because that should tell you if they're not going to be transparent now, they're definitely not going to be transparent with actually getting you money. So those are the 5 things I think that are essential to really look at if you're a filmmaker, especially an indie film. I do believe, and I'm still, as much as there's a lot of bad things going on industry-wise, and a lot of times you'll see posts and articles about how bad it is right now, and it is tougher industry right now, and especially right now. But I'm still optimistic myself long-term, because I still feel like there's so much for indie filmmakers to do that know how to do a lean budget, that know how to do marketing really well. I still think there are ways to kind of break through, and especially filmmakers that get really good at social media. I still think it's underused. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic, but I think please keep all of these in mind, and as always, like, subscribe, comment, but definitely let me know, like, what have been some of your deals. Do you have a horror story of like a terrible deal that you signed up for and that you never saw any money? And vice versa, if you have positive stories, I'd also love to hear those always. That's always nice to hear. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.